Okay, so this figure is one of those summary figures that is going to review a lot of things, but at least it's all on one slide. So you don't have to go back different slides to figure out what happened, before or after. It's all there. And how this figure is laid out is here are the days. All right, so we got day 1 all the way to day 28, and then we start back over to 1 again. So this suggests that pregnancy didn't happen, right? Because menstruation is a result of pregnancy and fertilization not happening, okay? So obviously this tells me that we're looking at a cycle in which fertilization and pregnancy does not occur. Up here we have, your hypothalamus and anterior pituitary, all right, producing FSH and LH. Down here we have that graph of the big four, all right. We have FSH in blue, LH in orange, estrogen in the dashed green line, and progesterone in the dashed purple line. So these are the hormone levels down here. This upper row is the ovarian cycle. So these are the events that occur in the ovary, which is basically the follicles we're looking at. And then here is the lining of the uterus. So this is going to be the uterine cycle. And notice that they show the 2 layers of the endometrium. The stratum basale here, which doesn't really ever go away, but then the stratum functionalis, which is going to be removed during menstruation, proliferate, and then enter the secretory phase. All right, so it's got everything you need to know as far as this female reproductive cycle. So we're just going to break it down into the phases. So the first thing I'm going to do is highlight day 1 through 5. All right, so day 1 through 5 is known as the menstrual phase because the stratum functionalis is getting removed. What's happening in the ovary is we are maturing follicles, right? We might even get to a secondary follicle. All right. Now, what's causing the maturing of the follicle and what's causing menstruation? Well, the maturing of the follicles is happening because we have relatively high FSH. Menstruation is occurring because we have low estrogen and low progesterone. Okay? So now after 5 days, menstruation stops, and we're going to enter what's known as the proliferative phase of the uterine cycle, and we are still in the follicular phase of the ovarian cycle. But we've formed the mature Graafian follicle. All right? And when we have this mature follicle, and even a late secondary follicle, it produces estrogen. So notice we have estrogen starting to go up in this kind of late follicular phase in the ovary. All right? So the estrogen levels start to go up. That's going to help proliferate the endometrium. All right? So in the late follicular phase of the ovarian cycle, we have formation of the mature follicle and production of estrogen. The estrogen is going to cause the proliferational phase of the endometrium. Now, notice the level of that estrogen is going to get so high, it switches. And instead of a negative feedback, it causes a positive feedback effect on the pituitary to produce large amounts of LH. And we see this LH surge occur. What does the LH surge do? It's going to cause ovulation. So now in purple, I show the ovulation event. Really, it's not really a phase, it's an event. Right? It's a pretty significant event, but it's being triggered by high LH. So we get ovulation of the secondary oocyte surrounded by the corona radiata that enters the fallopian tube. All right. What's happening in the uterus? We're still in the proliferative phase. Now, once ovulation occurs, remember this empty follicle transitions into the corpus luteum. Corpus luteum produces progesterone, estrogen, relaxin, and inhibin. And we see that progesterone levels go up and estrogen levels go back up. Estrogen has kind of a double curve. There's a peak here because the Graafian or mature follicle, and then there's a peak here because of the corpus luteum. So now we've got the combination of progesterone and estrogen from the corpus luteum stimulating that endometrium. And it's known as the secretory phase. There's some glands that form in the endometrium and secrete some mucus. But that's going to help prepare, right, for implantation. Right now, we're getting ready. So if we're at, day 24 or so, we're ready to roll. We're ready for that embryo. And we're just got to wait for it. We got to wait and find out. Did it form? Did it form? And obviously from this diagram, it never formed. All right, so day 25 comes around, that this corpus luteum's like, I don't know. I haven't heard from HCG at all. You know what? I'm done. I'm going to degenerate into the corpus albicans. I'm going to stop producing progesterone. Progesterone levels drop. I'm going to stop producing estrogen. Estrogen levels drop. And remember, when those two hormones drop, that's what triggers menstruation. So we have another menstrual phase, and we start that whole cycle over again. Now, if pregnancy did happen, we would have HCG production from the embryo. All right. We would have that HCG stimulating the corpus luteum to stay and keep producing your hormones. Corpus albicans never forms, and we progress into the pregnancy. All right. So the big thing to remember is this phase, the post-ovulatory phase, when the uterus is in the secretory phase and the ovaries in the luteal phase, there's two things that could happen, right? In this case, fertilization doesn't happen, but if fertilization does, we need progesterone and estrogen to keep being produced. So that human chorionic gonadotropin from the embryo has to stimulate that corpus luteum to stay. Then eventually during pregnancy, the placenta produces most of the hormones required for the pregnancy. All right, so that is the very end. I'm going to show this one more time just because I think it's a good one to start with, but then also to end with, as far as knowing what hormones are doing what throughout the 28-day cycle. So that's the end of it. Good luck. It's a tough one, but hopefully it makes sense when you can compare the hormone levels to what's happening in both the ovary and what's happening in the uterus. Good luck, and let me know if you have any questions.